Hello and welcome, and thank you for watching our recording. Our presentation is called But You Look Like Me, Examining Black Women COVID Long Haulers Experiences Using Critical Race Theory by Twanna Hodge and Nicole Miller.
So in this presentation, we're going to go over our intro and theory, where we will introduce ourselves and our positionality, as well as explaining the project rationale. Then we'll move into findings, where we will give a summary of the relevant findings, some notable themes we pulled out, and some interesting participant quotes. Then we'll move into implications, which is why does this work matter and where do we go from here? And we'll end with a call for questions.
And so we're going to dive into who we are as presenters and our positionality right now. My name is Twanna Hodge. I'm a brown-skinned woman wearing a brown sweatshirt with a head wrap and glasses. I'm a third-year PhD student at the University of Maryland College Park College of Information.
I am Nicole Miller. I am a light-skinned woman with brown, pink, and purple hair. I'm wearing a gray blouse and glasses. I am a fifth-year PhD candidate in the Information Studies program at the University of Maryland College of Information.
All right, and so I am a Afro-Caribbean cisgender female. I'm a first-generation American and college graduate, and I'm a person with multiple disabilities.
And I am white, female, queer, disabled, chronically ill, neurodivergent, and I grew up in the U.S. military healthcare system, which really gives me a very specific and unique perspective on healthcare in this country.
And so this is a quote from one of the interviewees, and I'm going to read it out loud. So, but you look like me, meaning that she's a woman of color. You're a woman, and I chose you on purpose. Because you're brown skinned like me. I chose you on purpose because I was making an informed decision about my own health experiences because I figure that you might listen to me. There might be a high opportunity, a higher rate of you listening to me as opposed to somebody else. And so this quote encapsulates why this research is so important and why sometimes despite racial concordance, so like the same healthcare provider having the same racial identity, doesn't always prevent racism or sexism. And there's a quote from Audre Lorde that I absolutely love that says, "What is most important to me must be spoken, made verbal, and shared, even at the risk of having it bruised or misunderstood." And one of the core reasons why we are doing this research. And so diving into misogyny war. So misogyny war define a state-sanctioned structural and systemic violence indexed by race and gender. And so this is a racial misconception is that Black people have a higher pain tolerance or do not feel pain. Um, Same as their white counterparts. And so a lot of times it can lead to Black populations not being able to get the pain medication care that they need, especially when it comes to Black women in childbirth or who have to deal with chronic pain.
So, two great examples of this, and I say great ironically here, are Beyonce and Serena Williams, which I think most people can agree are probably the two, if not two of, the most well-known and recognizable Black women on the face of the planet. And both of them experienced misogynoir in the healthcare setting. So Beyonce, during her pregnancy, developed a complication called preeclampsia. She said that she was 218 pounds the day that she gave birth, which is not really typical. She also had high blood pressure and developed toxemia, preeclampsia, and she said, quote, "In the womb, one of my baby's heartbeats paused a few times, so I had to get an emergency C-section." And despite having all of these things, the toxemia, the preeclampsia, and the high blood pressure, the C-section ended up being an emergency rather than being something that was considered and scheduled. With Serena Williams, on the other hand, she suffered a near fatal blood clot after childbirth. And when she brought up concerns about blood clots because she had a history of them, she was dismissed by the healthcare workers around her. They said, no, that's not a thing. That's not what's happening. You don't have to worry about that. And she insisted that something was wrong. And if she had not gotten the care that she needed, she would have died from this blood clot, most likely. And she said in an essay, quote, "Every mother everywhere, regardless of race or background, deserves to have a healthy pregnancy and birth." And we use these two examples because if it happened to them, these women are powerful, well known, wealthy women. It can happen to any woman of color. So, this project that we're presenting here is part of a broader research project on COVID long haulers. It is investigating the information behaviors of people with long COVID. Long COVID being defined as continuing to have COVID symptoms for at least 3 months. So rather than having it go away in the kind of 2 to 4 week span that we expect, having those symptoms persist past the normal amount of time that it takes to get over COVID. Information behavior, to define that real quick, is people's interactions and non-interactions with information, including seeking, sharing, creating, and avoiding information, amongst other activities. So we're looking at how these people got their information about long COVID because we didn't know what it was, obviously, until COVID really became a pandemic, and then we still didn't know that long COVID was happening until we really were able to start getting data about it. So we were learning on the fly. And that led to some very interesting information behavior on the part of people with long COVID. So the methods for this research study were two-part. First, we had a survey with 135 respondents, and then we did follow-up interviews with 29 of these survey respondents.
So the theoretical framework that we are using is critical race theory. So critical race theory is that racism is endemic and normalized through systems designed to support and systematize whiteness as superior, as well as critical disability theory, which is used to analyze disability as a cultural, historical, relative social and political phenomenon, and understanding that even now the medical model of disability is that it's malady, something that outside of the norm that needs to be addressed, cured, eliminated, and that it is something where people need to become normal. They need to function and be engaged in this labor capitalistic system that we are in. So these two theories allow us to be able to look at the women experiences through these different lens.
And critical disability theory, additionally, really focuses on the fact that disability comes from the medical issue rather than the social model, which focuses on how disability is something that is happening because of society, because of these phenomenons happening around you.
And so, despite the strides that was made in 2020 and 2021 around dismantling anti-Black racism, we've seen now, especially in 2025, a lot of rollback and removal of legal policies as well as laws around this. And it's made it even more challenging for us to create a more equitable world. And so, for this presentation, what we did, also looking at the 29 interviewees, the subsample we looked at was three Black African American women, and their ages from 29, 41, and 53. And
63.
thank you. 63. My glasses are useful for something. Thank you. And so this is a wide range of their ages, but regardless of that, it still showed that they experienced medical gaslighting, health disparities due to systemic racism, and more. And Nicole will go into some of the common themes.
So, some of the common themes that we found in their interviews with these three women were a history of medical distrust. This is due to scientific racism, misogynoir, as Twanna explained, medical erasure, but also previous unethical studies. One of the most famous being the Tuskegee syphilis study, where Black participants, I say participants, subjects, we're not told that they had syphilis and we're not treated for it in order to see what would happen. This kind of unethical study, unfortunately, has happened many times, usually against people of color or disabled people or both. And that has led to a history of distrust in the medical system because how do you know that they're actually telling you the truth? Additionally, feelings of frustration. Long COVID is new. We didn't know what it was, 5 years ago when the pandemic began. And so there was a lack of information. We didn't know what it was. We couldn't give information about it. But there was also a lack of communication where we were inundated with information, but not a lot of it was actually useful or novel or something that actually was able to be communicated clearly to the people who needed it. There were also feelings of betrayal where people were trusting these medical professionals only to be gaslit or ignored. So they were told they weren't experiencing the things that they were experiencing. Dismissal, their concerns were negated, downplayed, or even outright rejected. And condescension, where healthcare professionals who themselves lacked information about long COVID still believed that they knew better than their patients, even when those patients were bringing them reliable sources to back them up, not just going to Dr. Google. So, a couple of quotes from one of our interviewees that really highlight these themes. Firstly, she said, my doctor, was telling me that I wasn't experiencing what I was experiencing. Nobody listens to a Black woman. This woman had had this experience before, and she felt frustrated that it was continuing to happen. This was her medical distrust plus the gaslighting. She also said, quote, for 3 years, you, her doctor, listened to me tell you that all this was happening. And every time we talked about it, even when I made the doctor emotional, she told me that I didn't have long haulers COVID. And I was like, I'm leaving you now. There was this line, and she hit that line of, I can't trust you. You're not listening to me. And that is, unfortunately, something that's very common with this population, as we've found. She also said, quote, I would tell my doctor that I got this information straight from the National Institute of Health. I would bring it to the doctor's appointment, and she said, no, long haulers is not it. I know how to read. I know what a peer review article is. I know how to read that. I know what that means. This interviewee was dealing with her lack of information by going to credible sources, by finding the quality information. And even when she had that backing her up, her doctor was ignoring her and dismissing her concerns. And what this really boils down to was this final quote from her where she said, my doctor didn't want to tell me anything about long haulers. She didn't want to give me any information. And in a situation like long COVID, where the best defense we have is information, that is a huge problem.
And so when we think about the implications in the future, it is very vital and important that we focus, next slide, please, um, on addressing ongoing health disparities caused by racial and gender discrimination, supporting progress towards ethical and equitable health care for Black women. So this means not ignoring them or dismissing their concerns. It also means continuing denouncement of racial and gender stereotypes, and the role they play in misogyny war and inequity in healthcare. And also thinking about the current political climate and government attitudes and initiatives combating DEI, affirmative action, a lot of the healthcare institutions being defunded or gutted in terms of employees. And so really understanding that the life expectancy of Black women in this country is already shorter than white women, and that the maternal and infant mortality rates are already higher for this being a developed or first world country in many cases. And I want to leave us with this quote from Bell Hooks that says, while careers and making money remain important agendas, they never take precedence over valuing and nurturing human life and well-being.
Thank you very much for listening. We have provided our contact information at the bottom of this slide. You are more than welcome to reach out to either of us or both of us if you have any questions or follow-up comments on this presentation. We'd also like to take a second to thank the COVID Long Haulers team, which is the source of this data. We are both a part of that. This is headed up by Beth St. Jean and Brooke Fisher-Liu, who are both the co-leads at the University of Maryland on this project. We're also funded by the UMD Pandemic Readiness Initiative. On the following slides, we have our references, but thank you very much for listening, and we look forward to hearing from you.